welcome everyone. I am excited to bring this distinguished group of leaders together. We're here to talk about transactional and relationship-based trade-offs in customer experience and loyalty. We'll start with a round of introductions. I'm Mary Carter. I'm the Chief Revenue and Strategy Officer at Phaedon, and we're excited to introduce Emily Collins next. Emily, go ahead.
Hi, my name's Emily Collins, and I'm a research director at Forrester, and I lead our B2C marketing research team.
Thank you. Robbie.
Hi, my name is Ravi Eraguntla. I'm the Chief Product Officer at Phaedon. I'm very glad to be here.
Yes, hi, I'm Chris Tremaine. I'm the CEO of Phaedon. Super excited to be here and to participate in this great discussion.
Great. Well, let's get right into it. Thinking about brand experience, customer experience, and employee experience, let's talk about how they're interrelated and how they work in tandem to deliver an optimized experience overall. And maybe we could start with you, Emily.
Sure, I can start. So at Forrester, we've been talking about the interconnectedness of brand and customer experience for many, many years. But in many organizations, marketing and customer experience initiatives and activities tend to be siloed and separate and compartmentalized and sometimes misaligned. And so recently we did some research to really uncover a data-backed connection between brand and customer experience, and that we figured out that the relationship between these two are not just individually drivers of business results, but when they're put together, they can have a compounding effect. So the framework that we've created and have launched provides a comprehensive view of how brand performs both with prospects as well as customers, and we've created this growth grid. And what we found is that for some industries, the impact to revenue for not just combining, but working in tangent on your brand and customer experience efforts, it can really be multiplicative. So for example, with direct banks in the US, the impact of improving both your brand and customer experiences has a 2.3 times revenue impact. Whereas if you're just focusing on brand experience or you're just focusing on customer experience, it's like a 1.5 to 1.6 times impact on revenue. And then when you think about, you have brand experience, you have customer experience, and then you have the employee experience. And the connection is that employees are the frontline employees who are determining and delivering that brand and customer experience. So they're the ones that are directly shaping it and bringing it to life. And so when you think about your strategy, you really want to make sure that these three things are connected both from an execution standpoint, but as well as a strategy standpoint. So, the success of your employees is inextricably linked to those customer outcomes. And then just an example of this is a company like Lyft, who views their drivers as their primary customer, right? Because they understand that in order for there to be enough rides for Lyft customers, there have to be drivers that continue to choose Lyft over other rideshare apps. So they're really focused on how the employees deliver that customer experience, and they're inseparable parts of the strategy.
Oh, it's great to hear your point of view, Emily. I totally agree. All of these are so interrelated, and the employee, we often explore with our clients the employee experience because it is, as you mentioned, so foundational. It's so foundational to the customer experience, how it's ultimately delivered and optimized. And just like you talked about the silos in CX and brand X, we also see that all the time between customer experience and employee experience being treated really as distinct entities, right? And that fragmented approach is really what then fails to facilitate a truly customer-centric strategy. When teams are operating from a different set of priorities and goals, that's gonna change focus. And really the outcome of that is in today's interconnected world, customers expect consistent interactions across all of their channels. And so when you have disjointed experiences, it becomes a real liability for organizations.
Thanks, Chris. One tool I think that's been remarkably powerful in breaking down some of those silos is journey mapping. It can allow brands to visualize touch points across omni-channel customer experience and employee experience, It helps identify gaps, pain points, opportunities that ultimately will shape that overall experience. And so, thinking about the fact that this approach addresses organizational barriers by fostering a more interconnected strategy, I'm just kind of curious what you're seeing with respect to those very tools and how they come into play.
Yeah, I mean, I can start. I mean, Mary, I'm a big fan of journey mapping. I think they're great, but they're, more than just customer satisfaction, they really have a compelling business case here. The financial impact of integrating both customer experience and employee experience goes, again, well beyond customer satisfaction. Streamlining efforts across departments, right? It obviously leads to greater efficiencies, but also improved employee experience contributes to happier employees, which means you get higher employee retention. And when teams work together towards shared objectives, no surprise, they simply perform better. They use resources more effectively, they reduce redundancies, and they optimize their efforts.
That's a great point, Chris. And when we survey our business and technology leaders, one of the number one priorities that often comes back is, for their business success is improving the customer experience. And when we ask them how they're going to do that, the number one response is around aligning cross-functional teams to journey maps, right? And so I think everyone probably at this point agrees that journey maps are a good idea. And I think especially during this current time where we have things that are changing very rapidly and very quickly, it's also important to remember that journey maps are not sort of a set it and forget it exercise. It's a continuous process. And, you don't need necessarily like the best tech or these like fancy tools to do it. We have something at Forrester that we call guerrilla CX, which is where you're really trying to use kind of, shoestring tactics, right? Customer journey maps can be done with Post-it notes on a whiteboard. It doesn't necessarily have to be in sort of the, a sophisticated technology tool or require that kind of investment.
Love it. Yeah, I mean, I think the idea of setting and forgetting, which happens, the companies make big investments in journey mapping, but the big challenge they often face is, okay, everything I learned, integrating those insights and actually acting on them is hard. And, one of the things we've done is we've introduced and delivered a journey atlas, if you will, to really help address this big challenge, and particularly for larger, more complex organizations that have, a lot of data, more diverse audiences, a more mature journey mapping practice. And really what this journey atlas is it helps to standardize the process by which your brand analyzes multiple customer journeys. Think of it as really a large index of all the maps you have, organized by customer type and business unit. And the ability to contextualize multiple user journeys in the same atlas is really a systematic way to avoid bias. It eliminates silos that we've been talking about, creates alignment in priorities, roles, and responsibilities.
And I imagine there's a lot of transparency that comes from creating these atlases. So I think that's really important and helps really drive that journey centricity.
Yeah, I mean, it does strike me, especially for the companies that have made investments already. It's a way to bring all of that together. So thank you for sharing that, Chris. I love the Atlas idea. Just talking about experience now, thinking about how to optimize that and delivering ultimately on the promise of loyalty. I'm curious what you're seeing in terms of points of intersection and nuance looking across industries when it comes to really optimizing and ultimately driving towards loyalty.
Yeah, thanks, Mary. I mean, first and foremost, we are truly passionate about keeping the customer at the center of everything we have to do. And to do that effectively, we know that we need to keep a good pulse, a constant pulse on consumer mindset across multiple industries. Humanizing loyalty is a set of research, foundational research that we actually did way back in 2017. And it really paved the way for what we know as emotional loyalty today. And what this research did for us was really uncover 6 key drivers of emotional loyalty that ladder nicely to 3 overarching themes. The first is trust and reliability, and then appreciation and investment, and also empathy and shared values. We quickly learned that these drivers were just as applicable in the brand-employee relationship as they are in the brand-customer relationship. So we've been talking about both of those things. Obviously, engaged, happy, loyal employees are critical to delivering world-class customer experience. And we're really excited because we just finished a refresh on this research in March of 2025, where we surveyed nearly 2,000 customers. And overall, across retail, hospitality, dining and entertainment, transportation, the most important attributes are all brand related. The top three actually ladder up to the trust and reliability theme I talked about. And they include: the brand lives up to its promises, it keeps my personal information secure, and it provides valued products, services, or experiences. And tied with that last one was an attribute that aligns to empathy and shared values. This attribute that aligns to this is really the brands resolve issues quickly, completely, and without question. And then we really took a look at gaps between what consumers expect and what they actually experience. And while we did find that brands are closing those gaps, we're also seeing that expectations are increasing at the same time.
Got it. Thank you, Chris. You talked about some of the industries that were included in the research. I'm curious if there were any noticeable differences between industries, if you've had a chance to look at that yet.
Yeah, we definitely saw some differences. We were recently reviewed healthcare and retail specifically, and just some top line takeaways from that. First, nuances they exist across industries when it comes to really what's most important, but trust and reliability still reign everywhere, but particularly, as we would suspect, in healthcare. Consumers also have higher expectations from healthcare compared to other industries when it comes to going above and beyond. Again, not a big surprise, and this really is an appreciation and investment attribute. Healthcare consumers also reported significant experience gaps when it came to how a brand acts on their feedback and also in feeling valued. And then finally, we heard retailers, they struggle with making challenges or changes based on customer feedback, but see further significant gaps across empathy and shared values.
Emily, I'm curious in terms of some of the research you're doing at Forrester, how does that line up to some of what Chris was sharing?
I would say that we see similar trends in the research that we do, and the big product that we have that looks at this is our customer experience index, which measures the experience quality. And I think when Chris, you were talking about that gap, it brought to mind that the customer experience is really the consumer's perception and the customer's perception of the experience that you deliver, right? So, it's really difficult for companies to deliver value because ultimately the value is in the eye of the beholder. And so we really want to think about, a lot of organizations talk about creating value. And I think it's really critical to understand that it's very difficult for companies to deliver value to customers, right? That they have to perceive that value and to, they have value networks that they're using to realize that value. It's not just between the brand and the customer. But certainly when we look at the metrics of customer experience, whether that's emotion, ease, or effectiveness, emotion is always going to have the emotion of the experience is always having the highest correlation to loyalty metrics, right? Of retention, enrichment, and advocacy. So while the different emotions that are elicited to drive that loyalty vary based on the industry, right? So in hospitality, often it's feeling valued and appreciated. In healthcare and financial services, sometimes it's feeling confident and or happy in other industries. But in general, emotion tends to be that highest driver of loyalty outcomes. And so then when you think about loyalty execution and from like an operational standpoint, and you look at how organizations tackle building relationships with customers tactically, we see sort of this spectrum of approaches from what we're calling kind of traditional loyalty all the way to more modern loyalty. And when we think about traditional loyalty, that's where you have maybe a little bit more of a siloed approach. The benefits and the engagement tends to be more transactional. transactional, oftentimes the program is running kind of in the background, right? It kind of happens regardless what the customer does. It's sort of passive versus active. And then when you think about modern loyalty, it's a much broader diversification of engagement, looking at really driving towards that emotional loyalty, much more insights driven, proactive, kind of trying to think about how to motivate customer behavior and feelings. And it's much more integrated with kind of all of the different customer facing strategies of the organization. And it sounds like traditional is bad and modern is good. And that's not necessarily the case, right? There are trade-offs that you have to think about when you're trying to get to modern loyalty. It costs more money, it requires more resources, and really thinking and aligning that with kind of your objectives and capacity and capabilities as an organization. So that's kind of how we think about that manifesting in the loyalty context.
That makes so much sense. Thank you. I think it's a good time to ask Ravi, what role does technology play in all of this? We've talked a lot about the key considerations that drive loyalty and optimize experience, but, talk a little bit about technology.
Thanks, Mary. So when I think about intersections and nuances on loyalty programs from a technology lens, three things come to my mind. One, strategic and pragmatic application of technology. The second is leveraging data intelligently to drive personalization and insights. And the third is a scalability and flexibility of the technology to support long-term growth. So let's dive into each of these. When it comes to strategic and pragmatic application of technology, the focus should be on tying technology choices directly to the business goals and the specific objectives of the loyalty program. It's crucial to avoid a technology-first approach. Instead, the technology should be a direct enabler of the loyalty program's strategy. For example, if the goal is deep personalization, the investment needs to be in robust CRM and data analytics capabilities. If the focus is on seamless omni-channel experiences, then API integrations and platform interoperability becomes very important. Secondly, as it relates to data as the foundation for personalization and insights, brands need to recognize the critical role of data infrastructure and analytics in creating truly personalized experiences and generating actionable insights for program optimization. Loyalty programs thrive on understanding customer behavior. Investing in the right data infrastructure, encompassing data collection, storage, integration, and analysis is non-negotiable in this day of age. This includes leveraging AI and machine learning to segment customers, predicting future behavior, and delivering hyper-personalized offers and communications. And the third point is around scalability and flexibility of the technology platform. I cannot emphasize enough on the importance of choosing a technology stack that can adapt to future growth, evolving customer needs, and the potential integration of new features. The initial launch of a loyalty program is just the beginning. As the program grows and evolves, the underlying technology needs to be scalable and seamlessly handle increased data volumes and user traffic. Furthermore, the platform should be flexible enough to accommodate new features, integrations with other systems, and evolving customer expectations. So choosing a rigid or outdated technology stack can lead to significant roadblocks and increased cost down the line. So it is very prudent to consider the long-term vision for the loyalty program and select technology that can adapt accordingly across the diverse landscapes of healthcare, retail, and hospitality.
Ravi, I wanted to just echo that point you made about the flexibility, because when we did our last loyalty technology wave evaluation at Forrester, we found that a lot of the organizations over time have been investing more and more in modular platforms and modular functionality so that, companies that work with them can kind of flex up and flex down depending on their maturity and the types of capabilities that they're using. And one thing that we've always said about loyalty technology is that it's complementary, right? A loyalty platform, like that unique functionality that it offers really tends to be around like the program management capabilities, but the best loyalty technology integrates with really sophisticated marketing automation and other technologies capabilities that it plugs into the existing tech stack rather than replicating capabilities that exist elsewhere. So just kind of wanted to plus one that
Totally
point.
agree with that.
Thank you. Yeah, those are really helpful thoughts. And we'll talk more about AI in just a few minutes, but I did want to bring up just the environment we're in. There's a lot of volatility. There's a lot of consumer confusion. There's a lot of companies trying to navigate this complexity. And so I think it would be great to just spend a few minutes talking a little bit about what we're seeing, how companies are navigating, how they can navigate in times like this.
Definitely. So I would say that marketers and businesses are really no stranger to volatility and uncertainty, right? You have the past couple of decades have been sort of rich with lots of disruption and upending of norms and things like that. And only 5 years ago, we were kind of thrust into a global shutdown caused by COVID-19. So, the big difference about this current period of time, because I think a lot of companies are sort of dusting off their playbooks from 2020 and 2021 and starting to think about, okay, we're going to pause, we're going to wait, we're going to kind of wait and see. But the big difference about this current period is that the level of confusion and sort of the rapidity of change is unlike previous crises, right? So you've got companies who are saying, it's a lot more self-inflicted, it's a lot more erratic. And I think that's putting a lot of organizations kind of on their heels at this time. But across the board, we have companies who are needing to constantly, doing even more budget scrutiny, right? Which is nothing new for marketers, but I think it's especially pressing right now. And I think the big thing to remember is that this isn't an everything must change all at once kind of moment. Certainly there are organizations who are looking at where they can adjust and pull back and change they're doing a lot more scenario planning. But the foundational work of brand building and the customer segmentation and the customer understanding and all of the brand value propositions are unlikely to change, or they're not going to go out the window during this time period. And so I really think that, when we think about Forrester clients and how we're advising them, we're really talking to them about like, this isn't a moment for knee-jerk reactions, right? You really want to stick to your long-term strategies. And instead of that sort of, let's change everything all at once, there's like a good, better, best strategy that you can have, right? So, right now, stick to the long-term strategy. That's good. If you're able to optimizing your messaging, your promotions, your strategies for the current moment, really based on taking a lead from your consumers and kind of what their financial resilience and appetite is. Because I think in addition to companies, consumers are a little bit spooked right now and they're not feeling great necessarily. They're worried. And then, like during the pandemic, there are going to be some companies with really big war chests who can afford and they have the executive support to start making bigger bets and looking for bold plays where they can seize new territory. So if you think about like 2008, Target entered the grocery market, and now that's a $25 billion business for them. If you think about the pandemic, there were a lot of brands that took advantage of everyone being home to introduce new hybrid and digital experiences that have really stood the test of time and are now kind of part of the experiences that consumers have. So, there are some things that we kind of expect to happen. Companies are scrutinizing their advertising spend. They're pushing harder on AI to drive efficiency, which I know we're going to talk about in a little bit. But I also think now's a really good time to double down on loyalty. We saw this during the pandemic. There's multiple ways to drive growth. You can either acquire new customers or you can retain the ones you have and start to build and grow those relationships with them. And so, sure, it's great to win new customers, but during this time, kind of prioritizing your best customers protects some valuable revenue, and it also creates positive brand equity that when things settle down, you can start to use that to build on build on coming out of this time. So that's my quick point of view.
Totally agree with everything you said, Emily. And we learned a lot during the pandemic, right? Your point about doubling down on loyalty investments now and in times of uncertainty, it's true. It costs way more to acquire a new customer than to keep the ones you have, and those are very valuable to an organization. And I also agree that marketing investment is going to continue to have constraints around it, and this is going to make it harder and harder for companies to decide how are they going to spend their resources most effectively. I do see a big glimmer of hope as more companies are really seeming to focus on investing in embracing precision engagement, right, to drive measurable returns rather than broad reach campaigns. I think the successful brands will really optimize their ROI by embracing kind of a combined formula that's going to combine powered AI, all the efficiencies gained for that, but also deeply personalized human connections that's going to build emotional loyalty. The brands will work to continue to increasingly automate routine touch points and redirect resources to more high value, emotionally resonant interactions, if you will, using technology to kind of identify those key moments where humanized connection provides transformational benefits. And that dual approach is really going to reduce the cost and strengthen customer relationships, both of which are key to navigating economic headwinds.
Well, and if you have a strong loyalty program, you have insight that you can use to be even more strategic in your promotion strategy, right? So if you're trying to kind of meet your customers and you feel like they're going to benefit from promotions and that's what they're looking for, you can use the insights from your loyalty program and what you understand about your best customers to help make sure that you're directing those promotional investments in the right place, to both make them feel connected to you and feel supported, but also to drive that behavior that you're looking for.
Absolutely. And look, the payoff is huge. Higher customer lifetime value, reduced acquisition costs, more resilient loyalty, and ultimately what everyone wants, stronger bottom line results in 2025 and beyond.
Well, it's my time to say +1. You started to get into this, Chris, and another point driving uncertainty right now is definitely the role of AI. Honestly, in this era of volatility, AI offers a powerful and methodical approach to building resilient loyalty strategies. Two things come to my mind as to how AI can help. Traditional AI, or as some of us are now referring to as predictive AI, allows us to anticipate and proactively address potential challenges. Generative AI enables highly personalized and adaptive customer engagement. And if I expand into each one of these aspects, traditional AI, which has been around for some time now, should continue to be used for proactive uncertainty mitigation. Brands should leverage traditional AI to forecast potential shifts in customer behavior and market trends, enabling proactive adjustments to loyalty programs. In the context of uncertainty, this means analyzing past responses to economic shifts, social changes, or even localized disruptions to forecast potential impacts on customer engagement and loyalty. This allows brands to proactively adjust their loyalty program offerings, communication strategies, and even operational aspects to mitigate negative impacts and retain customer loyalty. Now, coming to generative AI, which is the newer, shinier part of AI, Gen AI should be used for personalized and adaptive engagement. Generative AI offers a new dimension to personalization, enabling real-time adaptation to individual customer needs in a fluctuating environment. Instead of relying solely on predefined segments and rules, generative AI can create unique content, offers, and communication flows tailored to a customer's immediate context and expressed sentiment, right? So this level of dynamic adaptation offers a sense of being understood and being valued amid the broader uncertainty that customers are encountering. So both traditional predictive AI as well as dynamic capabilities of generative AI are essential tools in navigating this complex landscape when it comes to talking about loyalty, Mary.
I think that I just have a couple points to add into from some of our research. We see that a lot of companies are still pretty early on in their Gen AI journeys, Robbie. Like you said, predictive AI has been the tools that marketers have used for decades at this point, right? And then generative AI is kind of like the new, and soon to be agentic AI now is going to be like the new AI in town. And about under a third of companies that we've surveyed say that they're actually in the production phase with Gen AI at this point. A lot of them are the use cases they're exploring and using are really around like content optimization and creation, and then the application assistants that are kind of already in the MarTech and AdTech tools they use. But we were talking a little bit about customer journeys and the importance of customer journeys earlier in this conversation. And about 50% of the marketers we've surveyed say they're planning to use Gen AI for customer journey analytics. So I think that could be a big unlock in terms of interrogating the journeys and looking for those synergies across the customer moments that matter. And the other thing that I wanted to say is when you think about this sort of barrier to not just use, but also moving from like efficiency use cases to really use cases that drive effectiveness and performance. I mean, there's only so much efficiency you can drive, but focusing on use cases that help drive that performance are going to help, continue to build results for folks. And one of the things that we've seen in our research is that, if you're going to put the pedal to the metal on AI, but you don't feel like you have the resources internally to do so because there's a big human overhead of monitoring, enablement, training, processes, especially when you think about like the importance of privacy. A lot of external partners are ready for the challenge, right? You have all of the agencies and service providers, like yourselves, who are building a lot of those capabilities and expertise internally. And then a lot of the MarTech tools, that we look at offer, are rapidly adding at least Gen AI use cases and capabilities to their platforms for folks to take advantage of. So there's definitely help out there if you don't feel like you have it internally.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. And, Robbie touched on it, some of your comments just now, Emily, like the role of technology and AI in delivering the right program. And so just curious to, ask Robbie too, to just elaborate a little bit more on that.
Absolutely. Emily touched on agentic AI, which means that we are trying to multiply the effect of AI very quickly. So AI is not just about efficiency and personalization in loyalty programs. It's also a critical enabler of trust, transparency, and compliance. So the idea is to focus on explainable AI, robust data privacy measures, bias mitigation, proactive compliance, and ethical implementation. So we can leverage AI to build stronger, more trustworthy relationships with our customers if you consider all of this together. This is a commitment, and this commitment to responsible AI practices will not only ensure regulatory adherence for industries that require it, but also foster the long-term loyalty that is essential for sustainable business growth, right? We need to make sure that everything is going to stay around for a long time. So if we examine this a little bit more closely, if you take AI-powered personalization, it's very crucial that customers understand why they are receiving specific offers or recommendations. Implementing explainable AI techniques can provide insights into the factors driving AI decisions. So, for instance, instead of just saying, you might like this, the system could explain, hey, based on your past purchases of organic coffee and your expressed interest in sustainable products, we thought you'd appreciate this offer on ethically sourced tea. So instead of just saying that, hey, buy this tea, this is a better way for the user to kind of understand why the recommendation is being made. This transparency builds trust and allows customers to feel more in control of their data and programs interactions with them. And I also feel that customers will be able to part with their data more readily if they understand how their data is kind of woven into the decision-making process. And if you look at regulated industries like healthcare, this explainability is even more critical because sometimes it is life critical to make choices, and those choices are something that they can rely on. The other aspect is enhancing data privacy and security. I mean, AI can play a huge role in this aspect. So a significant role, I would say, in bolstering the data privacy and security within loyalty programs. Like, for example, you have AI algorithms that can use anonymized or pseudo-anonymized data so that it can ensure compliance with regulations just like GDPR. Furthermore, AI-powered governance frameworks can help monitor data access and usage, who is accessing what data and who is using what data. And this will ensure that the customer information is handled responsibly and ethically, right? So by leveraging AI for enhanced security and adhering to stringent data privacy practices, we all can build a foundation of trust with our customers.
Yeah, I mean, I think, look, we could talk about this all day with AI. There's so much, and there's just so much to talk about. And I think, Emily and Robbie, everything you said is so true. I think, brands are faced with the challenge of really how to maintain authentic human connection, but also, really harness the AI's transformative power, right? As the technology that is evolving and as it's evolving, its use and impact continues to accelerate. I think the key is finding that magic blend of both. Robbie, you mentioned transparency. I mean, I think successful brands, they've got to embrace transparency about their AI usage, viewing it as a strength, certainly as nothing to hide. And a lot of the ways you said in using it, I think in making decision points more transparent makes a lot of sense, the why behind things. Clearly communicating when customers are interacting with AI versus human representatives, building trust. That's going to build trust and honesty, some of those pillars that drive emotional loyalty that we talked about earlier. I think brands that keep emotional intelligence and personal connection as a core focus, are going to stand out in really an increasingly AI-saturated marketplace. They're going to embrace AI-supported routine interactions, right? But that allows then human teams to really focus on more complex, emotionally nuanced customer experiences. And the smart brands really are going to maintain authenticity by establishing clear guidelines for AI usage, ensuring automated communications really reflect their core values and their personality.
And I think, what's underpinning all of this advice is that consumers, and our research shows that consumers still have a lot of skepticism and not a clear and confusion around what is AI and what isn't. And so I think having that transparency and not only helps with privacy aware consumers and making sure that your approaches respect the privacy attitudes of consumers, but it also, helps overcome some of that skepticism or kind of worry about AI and how that's going to impact their lives. So I totally agree.
Thank you. I think it's true. This group of panelists, we could probably talk about this all day, but we have come to almost the end of our discussion, and we've covered a lot of ground, from customer experience, brand experience, employee experience, the importance of the drivers of emotional loyalty, the role of technology and AI in a very complex and increasingly at times uncertain environment. So just big thanks. I think it's a good moment to just say, if you were to give one piece of advice in light of everything that we've talked about, during this discussion to marketing leaders, what would that be? And, I would ask maybe Emily to start us off.
So I think my big takeaway is data and customer understanding, right? Good marketing, relevant marketing, effective marketing has always and will always require a deep understanding of who your customers are and what their needs are. And I think especially during this time, whether it's because of this moment of volatility and their needs are changing rapidly, or because we're in this era and age of AI where data is even more valuable and quality data is required for quality outputs, really doubling down and reinvesting in making sure that you have up-to-date customer understanding, that you're collecting not just more data, but the right data, and respecting, your consumers' preferences and consent there, and really making sure that your marketing strategies, your messaging, your promotions, and your loyalty strategies reflect the financial resilience and appetite and your customer understanding and who your customers are.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Ravi, what are your thoughts there?
Yeah, my one piece of advice to marketers today considering the volatility and the evolving landscape we have discussed, is to slow down and embrace a methodical approach of experimentation and two-way door decisions. I advocate the urge to resist the urge actually to make sweeping strategic shifts based on uncertainty. Instead, prioritize running controlled experiments to validate assumptions, utilize reversible decisions. That will enable agile learning and also focus on data-driven evolution rather than making revolutionary changes in response to, volatility. By adopting an approach that will build adaptive and resilient marketing and loyalty systems, brands can effectively navigate the current environment and future uncertainties, ultimately leading to more sustainable and impactful results.
Thank you. Chris, bring us home.
Sure. I mean, listen, it's hard to beat both sets of great advice. I mean, Emily, knowing your customer, yeah, underscore. Ravi, slowing down to speed up, taking a methodical approach. Absolutely. I think what I'd really just add to that, and we talked about this a little bit already, but, with the uncertainty that we are faced with today, loyalty programs, and as we think of them, they're not just about transactions. We want to think about them as really, they're, some of the brand's best platform for delivering genuine empathy when our customers really need it most, right? And we expect to see consumers continue to gravitate towards brands that successfully balance not just value, but also values. We certainly see that today. Savvy marketers are going to be able to really bridge that gap between economic value, which everybody increasingly wants right now, but also values-based engagement, rather than treating those two things as often happens as competing priorities.
That's great. Well, thank you very much, Emily and Ravi and Chris. Thank you to those of you that have watched this and stayed all the way to the end. And with that, I'll close us out with big thanks and looking forward to seeing and hearing how these trends play out and how our companies and clients actually addressing all of what we talked about. Thanks, you all.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for having me.